its energy surrounds us and binds us.
General Grievous, commander of the Separatist droid army and cyborg-enhanced warrior. The story of Grievous is one of tragedy and loss, fueled by heartbreak and hatred. Grievous, born as Kaiman J. Shalal of the planet Kali, was bound to the life of a fierce warrior. At a young age, he quickly developed the skills of war and battle, learning many skills, including mastering the use of a slug-thrower rifle. His skills would eventually be tested when the Yamri or Huk invaded Kali around the time of 42 BBY, or before the Battle of Yavin. The Huk would proceed to enslave millions of Kaleesh, enraging the Kaleesh and sent the two species spiraling into war. The young warrior Shalal, enraged like the rest of his people, chose to fight against the Huk, and his life was changed in the process. It would be during his time fighting against the Huk that Shalal would meet his love, Ronderu Lige Kamar. The two lovers chose to fight against the Huk, side by side, killing thousands in the process. The two warriors bonded, and their skills continued to grow, and the pair would eventually be perceived as godlike warriors, the deadliest of all their people. Soon, tragedy would strike as Kamar's life would be taken at the hands of the Huk. Unable to change the events that took place, Shalal would change his name to Grievous the Heartbroken, unable to cope with the loss of his love. He would go on to assemble a team of elite soldiers, and they were able to drive the Huk from their home world. Fueled by hatred and lust for blood, Grievous and his soldiers would follow the Huk to their home and conquer it. The Huk, being out of a home, turned to the Republic and the Jedi for help, and with this help, they were able to drive the Kaleesh back to their world and left to starve. Grievous was confused. He wanted to help his people, and he was desperate. He took a job as an enforcer in the intergalactic banking clan. Sometime later, it would be learned that the Huk had interfered with several sacred burial grounds on Kali colonial planets, and Grievous was then enraged. He boarded a ship back to Kali to avenge the damage the Huk had done. Meanwhile, it was discovered that the chairman of the banking system, San Hill, had been conspiring with Count Dooku and saw the perfect time to take advantage of his opportunity, as Hill was angered by Grievous's departure, and Dooku needed a weapon for the newly founded Separatist army, and with the help of Hill, he was able to rig Grievous's ship with explosives. After the incident, Dooku was able to recover the body of Grievous and use the ability Sith Stun to stop his heart from entering cardiac arrest, thus saving his life. Dooku would proceed to lie to Grievous and convince him that the Jedi were the ones responsible for this attack, sparking a hatred for the Jedi Knights inside of him. Unable to thoroughly recover from this attack, Chairman Hill suggested that Grievous's body be replaced with that of a droid. Grievous would go on to agree to this plan as he knew his body would never fully recover, but he demanded that his mind remain intact. This would not be the case. Dooku created a sinister combination of Geonosian scientists in the blood of former Jedi Master Sifo Dyas. This would then corrupt his mind, erase his memories, and alter his equilibrium to provide him with enhanced agility. His organs were placed in a vacuum sac, and his respiratory issues did not cease to exist. From this, the General Grievous, the cyborg supreme commander of the droid army of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, was born.
As you guys heard, Al gave a pretty cool story about the backstory of General Grievous, also known as Kaiman Jai Shalal. Hopefully I'm saying that right because I've never actually heard it pronounced, but really interesting story that you never would have known had you given it a look outside of what you see in the movies and pretty much even in Clone Wars. But Alec, is there any pointers you want to make?
Yeah, man. I think this is a really interesting story. I think he's a character that doesn't really get enough screen time in the prequels. Luckily, in Clone Wars, he does have a lot of light shine down on him. But before we get into this thing, man, I gotta say it's really good to see you with that backdrop, man, with all the pops behind you. I know we've been missing those a little bit, and I'm excited to get back with mine too. So hopefully here in the next few weeks we can get that going, and we'll give a little bit better backdrop for these videos.
For sure, yeah. So I just got back up to Pittsburgh a couple days ago, and that's where my collection is. You see, this isn't all my Star Wars, but got a shelf of Star Wars here, and then my Marvel ones. I keep my other Star Wars ones in my room, just kind of separated by Jedi, Sith, troopers, Mandalorian, like you know what it looks like.
No doubt, man. We got to do
But
like a
yeah,
virtual tour or something at some point. Show these
do
things
what?
off. We got to do some sort of virtual tour here at some point and show these things off a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah, and I'm excited to, show them off. But yeah, it's exciting. What sucks is the one grail I'm missing is General Grievous.
Right.
He's really up on the list for me.
He's up there, man.
But like you said, General Grievous is an awesome character. You wouldn't see a lot. You don't. There was a lot, like you said. It was not until the Clone Wars where we found out a lot about him. But even with the Clone Wars, we hadn't heard of everything that you just talked about.
100%.
But I think one interesting thing is how long he's actually been a character. Because in Kalish, his home species, he was actually 150 years old, but in human terms, he's only 30. So I don't know if I'm sure that works as dog years somehow,
Something like
but
that, yeah.
I thought that was pretty interesting. But going off of what you said about how, strong of a warrior he was, we see it in Revenge of the Sith. We see it in the Clone Wars, just the skills he's learned, especially from Count Dooku. But, he was just a badass even before all that stuff. Before he got trained by Dooku, he killed like 40 Hux by the time he was like 8. Like Alex said, that was the species that took over his home planet. But I guess one thing I was curious about after listening to your story was when the Hux attacked Grievous's homeworld, did they have a reason, or was it just kind of like an invasion?
Yeah, not to my knowledge of anything along those lines. I think it was more of a genocidal act, and the Huck trying to dominate, obviously, as many planets across the galaxy as they could.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see. I wonder what it would have been like, because, like you said, Grievous and his warriors, they took the Hux and they conquered their homeworld and left the Hux, homeless. But the Jedi didn't know about this whole battle between the Hux and the Kalish. So it was really interesting that, the Hux kind of played, I don't know if it's the right term, but like devil's advocate. Like,
right.
No, that's not the right word.
They almost cried wolf when they went to the Republic and asked for help.
Yeah, because they were acting like they were the innocent ones, and the Kalish were the ones that really just took over their planet for no reason. And that was one of the main reasons why Grievous hates the Jedi as much as he does. So it'd be interesting to see how Grievous would be shown in the Star Wars that we know, had the Huck not done that. But
or even if the Jedi and the Republic had even known how the war between the two species even started, right?
Definitely.
Because they invaded, okay, and they took over all the colonies on the planet surrounding. And then the Kalish warriors fought back, took those back, and then went to the Huck's homeworld and took that. And then the Huck went to the Republic and was just like, oh no, they took our planet. When they threw the first punch, really, and in the eyes of the Kalish, there was an eye for an eye, essentially. And not that what they did was the right thing to do, but they definitely had reason to want to do it. And if the Jedi would have known that, I think their approach to handling the whole situation would have been completely different.
No, for sure. For sure. I think what's really cool to look at is his relationship with Count Dooku. We've talked about it very slightly in the past, but Dooku, we've talked about how he's an evil dude. He pretty much sabotaged Grievous's ship, like you said, had him blown to pieces just so, him and Sidious could just have him do their bidding.
And not even the fact that he sabotaged his ship was that like an evil act, but the fact that he didn't let him die, let him go through that excruciating pain, and then used him sort of in a way how the Emperor used Anakin, right?
Definitely.
They manipulated him, changed how he was perceiving things to make him almost some sort of super soldier, obviously infused with droid parts. Already being a fierce warrior, that combination is obviously deadly, as we see.
Yeah, and it's really cool because Grievous, he's a very smart character, so he has a lot of respect for Count Dooku and Darth Sidious. He knows that what they're doing, he thinks what they're doing is necessary, because of how he's been taught, how he's trained, his brain has been retrained. But at first, I know we've talked about this, is that he hated Dooku. Dooku would refer to him as a droid all the time, which he hated because he wasn't originally a droid, and he absolutely hated the armor and the droid looking
like shell.
suit, shell that he had. So what he did to kind of make that, this is where I'm a little confused, because a lot of the stuff we talk about Grievous is from Legends, but aside from that fact is, they said that he wiped his memory, but Grievous, you see his mask and you see his coat. It's actually the mask and the coats that him and his, I think they're called Magna Warrior, something like that. But whatever it is, whatever they wear, those are designed to resemble Kalish masks and coats too. So he did that because he just wanted to show Grievous that, Grievous wanted to show Dooku that he wasn't a droid. He has a very rich history as a demigod that I never knew.
No, that's actually a good point, because you talk about his memory getting wiped, and going back to obviously the loss of, and this is actually kind of interesting. It's not 100% confirmed that he lost his wife, that female warrior that he got so close with. In some situations is referred to as a cousin or a sister, sometimes referred to a wife or a lover. So it's not 100% clarified what that is, but obviously he has hatred for the Jedi when he is General Grievous and when he's in that shell. Okay, if he was truly lost his memory, he would have no reason to keep referring to himself as Grievous. Obviously, because he changed his name to that because he was grieving, and he would have no hatred because he would just think that the Jedi did that to him, and he is still grieving about the fact he lost his wife or whomever that was to him. Despite the fact that he actually was confirmed as having around 10 other lovers and countless number of children with other beings across the galaxy. But this one event takes such a high priority in his life and on his mental capacity that if he were to not remember that, I think his hatred and his strength wouldn't be quite as as large.
Yeah, I think that's yes and no, because regardless of if he remembers it or not, I think he'd still hate him because look how Palpatine was able to convince Anakin to hate the Jedi and Dooku and Darth Maul. So, even if it wouldn't have all happened, I'm sure if they got their hands on Grievous like they did in the movies, even if that stuff hadn't happened in the past, I'm sure there would have been some type of hatred.
That's actually a really good point. I'd like to know, with some of those people you just mentioned, obviously we know a ton about Anakin and a ton about Dooku and all that, but how how the Emperor, if there were any more underlying issues that isn't really known, maybe about Maul or whomever Sith apprentices there were, if there's any sort of correlation between the way that Grievous was turned and the way that they were turned in the Sith as well.
It could be. I think going back to your story, one of the coolest things was that he was infused with Sifo Dyas's blood. For those of you who don't know who Sifo Dyas was, he was a Jedi, obviously.
Basically gone mentally insane.
Yeah, it was believed that he ordered the clone army in Attack of the Clones about 10 years before that. I have a lot of questions about the whole who ordered the clones, because I know I've just seen so many different things, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of hate for this for not knowing exactly who did, but I've just seen so many different names floating around, whether it actually was Dooku or Plagueis or whoever it was. So if any of the people watching want to give me a little history lesson on that, I'd love to hear it, because I've read it so many times and I feel like it keeps changing. But going back to Sifo Dyas, it was really cool because we always see Grievous with lightsabers. He usually battles with 2, but he whips out 4 on occasion. It's he always has the most badass
It's sick.
lightsaber duels. But when I was doing my research on Grievous, it turns out that his first lightsaber, his first non-red lightsaber was given to him by Dooku, and it was Sifo-Dyas's lightsaber. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I didn't know this, but he originally collected red Sith lightsabers. But apparently the twin sisters, they were dark Jedi. I guess their names were Ka and Lee. I'd never heard of them before doing some research on this. Apparently they stole them from Grievous, and when he tracked them down on a very acidic planet, I pictured it a lot like Mustafar when I was reading about it. They were fighting, and apparently the two red lightsabers fell into a big like pool of acid because like half the planet was acid. And from that day, he just vowed to collect Jedi lightsabers. And, he vowed to kill the Jedi before that, but at that point, he wanted to just collect Jedi lightsabers with that, which I thought was really interesting.
That is really interesting.
And I'd like to find out a little bit more about who, like, the dark Jedi Ka and Lee were, because they were twin sisters, and I'd never heard of them before I looked up that information.
It's definitely something we should, dive into a little bit.
Definitely. So what other thoughts did you have on Grievous?
Not a whole lot really. I think the story explains the majority of it, and just the fact that it's sad. He's incredibly powerful and fueled by such a sadness, because the one thing he really truly cared for in this world was taken from him. Similar to the way that Anakin lost Padme and all that. That emotion is so strong, and it really fuels their fire. And I think that's really interesting to see. And I think it gives the character such more give the character more character, and it allows us to attach to them a little bit more emotionally.
Definitely. And I think it's really cool how he blends his like droid armor and his Kalish body, because you wouldn't, just watching the movies, just watching the Clone Wars, you'd just think that was how he's supposed to look. But his mask and his coat, he does these things to resemble his past. Really quick too, I didn't know this either, but another Kalish mask is in Star Wars. In The Force Awakens, remember in Maz's castle, mm-hmm. when Finn was gonna run away to the Outer Rim, he went with a couple characters. The red one, Sidon Athano, he has the mask. It's like curved at the top and it goes out.
Yeah.
That's actually a Kalish mask as well. He's a different species, but their masks were very artful pieces. So he wore that as his armor. And I thought that was really cool, because once I looked back at the character and looked at Grievous, like they do kind of resemble each other.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that either. That's really good. I love little Easter eggs like that.
No, definitely.
Just like stuff in the background like that makes connections to the rest of the galaxy. Yeah.
And I know, by the way, there's a new book coming out. I can't remember what it's called. It's about Thrawn, but I was about to say something about Thrawn. He was in Rebels, we found out he's a huge art collector. And apparently on what's called the Invisible Web in Star Wars, after Grievous died, Grand Admiral Thrawn bought Grievous's mask and kept it in his art collection. Wow. So I think it's really cool, just like you said, these little Easter eggs, connecting characters that you never thought would really connect, because you've never seen Thrawn and Grievous in the same room. Clearly, you've never really even had the same group of characters around them for the most part. I think the one would be Ahsoka, but other than that, like, the characters don't really connect. But then whoever wrote this little fact in, it's just really cool, because now Grand Admiral Thrawn and General Grievous are connected in that way, as in he owns his not his head, but just that symbolic droid Kalish mask that we know him as.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty cool.
That's interesting. In a way, it kind of reminds me of in art galleries, ancient masks found in Africa or found that belong to Native Americans or anything like that. And those are very high valued pieces of art because it really shows the history of those people and how they developed as a culture. And it's kind of the same thing.
Well, I could see this as like, in comparison, if like Genghis Khan or someone had like a formal headwear that they had, or a mask, anything like that, having that would be a one of a kind piece.
Right.
So I think that's what they were going for.
Wow.
But yeah, that's pretty much all that I had on Grievous. I thought you made a killer story. I learned a lot. I hope everybody else did too, because before reading the comics, before just really digging into who Grievous was, you don't really know that he has such a tragic backstory. You just kind of see this shell of a droid. But I think it's really interesting to go from Revenge of the Sith, where you just see what I was just talking about. Then you go to the Clone Wars. Obviously, they were made after each other. You go to the Clone Wars, and you just dig in so much more. And you can just find so much more out about it.
Right. Man, I really appreciate that. And as always, you guys out there, if you have any more information on that and, you want to talk about it more, or if you have any more, thoughts along that at all, feel free to throw those in there. We'd love to talk to you guys about it. So.
Definitely. So I think that's all we got for now, and we'll get this up as soon as possible, and we'll get this is obviously episode 3, so we'll have episode 4 coming at you next week. Not 100% sure what that's going to be yet, but we got a lot of good ideas, and we're excited to get this one up. Before we go, we are on Apple Podcasts now. We're on Spotify. I think it always helps to watch like the first 5 minutes of our videos on YouTube, so you can see the story that we're talking about, and then to finish it off, you can just go on Apple or Spotify to listen to our awesome takeaways. But
yeah, man, and as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button in the bottom corner, and follow us on all our social media platforms at Carbonite Convos, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the basic stuff. We'd really appreciate any love shown our way.
Definitely. So we'll, I think that's it for now, and we'll see you next week.
Awesome.
Thanks guys.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.